Next, from Springfield, Rich Miller, the founder and CEO of CapitolFax's, discusses the causes and implications of the state budget impasse. This runs about 50 minutes.
Thank you for that blissfully brief introduction. All right, so I'm getting old, so I have to wear glasses when I write my speeches, and I have to wear them now when I read them. Hopefully, yeah, I'll be all right. I was almost late. I've been bringing my dog, Oscar, into the Capitol. Well, he can't go into the Capitol, so he stays in the truck. And it hasn't been hot out, and he loves being in a truck. And so when I was getting ready to come back into town, he thought he was coming with me, and he didn't want to go into his crate. So I cut it really, really close. Let's just get right into it, shall we? I'm sure you saw coverage, you may have even seen the speech by House Speaker Michael Madigan on the floor of the House this week. He spoke for 10 minutes. He read from a prepared speech. That's rare that he would do that. And that he would speak that long. And he railed against the governor. And mainly, he said, essentially, that Rauner intentionally caused the impasse, that he had been planning it for quite some time. And he had some evidence, some comments that the candidate Rauner had made a couple of 3 years ago. But there's some others out there as well. Almost exactly a year ago, the governor, already elected and in office for a few months, told the Chicago Tribune that he wanted to use the budget crisis as, quote, leverage to force through his reforms. So there does indeed appear to be some intent there. Still, I kind of doubt that the governor figured it would last this long. I mean, you know, we're almost in the fiscal year 17 without a fiscal year 16 budget. He did figure that it would last perhaps as long as August because he signed the education funding bill to make sure that schools open on time in the fall. But man, nobody thought that we'd be here April 14th. I know it's April 14th because tomorrow is tax day. Today's April 18th? No, it's not. Please don't say that, because then I'm 3 days late. But, I mean, also, the crisis began when the Democrats decided not to strip the tax hike, or not to stop the tax hike from rolling back before Rauner was sworn into office. They could have done that, and Pat Quinn, said he would sign it if they passed it, and they didn't. And in retrospect, that was a huge mistake. They thought that they could roll this man. Here's this, you know, amateur hobbyist. No, careful. And they might have thought he was an idiot, actually, but they didn't. That didn't pan out, right? If they had not rolled back that tax hike, or not allowed that tax hike to roll back automatically, we wouldn't be here today talking about the impasse, because there would have been enough money to go around. Likely. Not definitely, but likely. Now, there are things that surround that as well. They didn't have the votes at the time, but you know, you want to pass something, you can, if you really want to pass something, you can find the votes. But moving right along, there is another alternate theory out there. I hear it quite a lot, that the governor, well, that this impasse is deliberate for a different reason. We all know that the governor strongly believes, that Illinois is burdened with too much bureaucracy. Democracy, no, we're not. We're definitely not burdened with too much democracy. At every level of government, state, local, community college, whatever, universities, and he believes the unions have caused much of this problem. He goes after the city of Chicago, Chicago Public Schools, Chicago State Universities, really all universities. He has railed against them all for being bloated. He has set up Chicago State. It's like flushing money down the toilet. He's also told me, several months ago, I confronted him with the fact that Illinois has one of the lowest, if not the lowest, per capita state employee ratios in the country. And he said, yeah, but look at all these social service agencies out there that we fund. It's a gigantic, he sees it, bureaucracy, okay? So, to some, the impasse is actually a tool to pare down or even hobble or even kill off, in the case of possibly Chicago State in a couple of weeks, bureaucracies. Now, I'm not really buying that. In fact, I don't buy that, partially because if you think about it, it would mean the guy is evil. And I don't think he's evil. He might be other things, but I don't think he is that. Now, I might be able to grant that he's not crying in his pillow every night about what's going on, except maybe when his spouse yells at him for allowing so many of these things to close. But a deliberate plan to kill off these bureaucracies, or I did it again, I don't know. But whatever the case, at least a side benefit of this impasse is strangling some of the bureaucracies that the governor despises. That's a fact. It's what's happening right now. Now, the future. Despite all the gloom and doom, I'm actually kind of somewhat tiny optimistic here. Rank and file members have been meeting. More importantly, the staffs have been helping these rank and file members and have been meeting amongst themselves. Staffs are controlled by the leaders and the governor. In the House Democratic Caucus, Madigan doesn't allow staff to, set policy like some others do. Keeps them on a pretty tough, short leash. But when he empowers them to do something, he trusts them to get that done. So could this work? I don't know. We'll see. The legislators backed down like that when Rauner pulled the plug on it last year. I think it was November. And they ran away. Just said, okay, we're done. They got back together again. They kept meeting. And now we're at a point where there may be some progress. Who knows? And then there's the speaker. And I don't think anybody in this room, including Steve Brown, who's the speaker's spokesman, knows exactly what Madigan is thinking. The good part is that the governor responds to pressure from Republican legislators. He doesn't like to lose, right? Winning is his motto, man. And so if he thinks he's going to lose a vote, like he thought he was going to with the Child Care Assistance Program, on the money for municipalities, he will adjust his position accordingly. And it's happened time and time again. Madigan also listens to his members, and if they pressure him And they do speak their minds to them, contrary to popular belief. They don't all walk around like serfs. Some of them, maybe even most, but not all. And so his members could also hold a key. Senate President Cullerton is always willing to do a deal. He'll do a deal with that door over there. No worries about that. The two Republican leaders, well, you know, Rauner's got millions. They want those millions for their campaign, so they are being very cooperative, let's say, with the governor's office. If it doesn't work, we're just going to have to wait, because Madigan's MO has always been, that's how we would say, you will negotiate against yourself until I am sufficiently satisfied that you are gotten yourself close enough to my position where then I will just spring in and make a deal. And sometimes it just comes right out of nowhere. Boom. And you look around and you go, wow, that passed. How the heck did that pass so quick? And that could very well be what happens on this, too. I mean, think if anybody tells you they know how this is going to end or they know how to get it to end, they are either insane or Mike Madigan. On that note, I will take your questions. And I want to thank you first, wish you a happy anniversary, 10th anniversary. And this has been a real pleasure coming here, but I did want to save a lot of time for questions, and I didn't plant any, unfortunately, so ask away. Anybody got one? Come on. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Somebody raise their hand.
Where are we as far as the Republican rank and file revolting from or leaving the plantation, so to speak, and putting a deal together aside from what the government?
I think there's subscribers will see more tomorrow. I think there's some of that going on, significant amount going on. Nobody's publicly broken with them yet. It may not happen until, let's just say, to the veto override situation of this bill that the governor, that Senate just passed after the House passed and sent it to the governor's desk. It's an appropriations bill, excuse me, for higher education, social services, back pay for state workers, et cetera. We'll see. That may be the next big test. I don't know. But there is a significant amount of unhappiness in that caucus, and that caucus really is, if they ever get it together enough to think about it, and I think some of them have, they really are the most powerful caucus, influential, let's say, in the entire building. They're playing a really good hand because they know every time they say, no, we're not doing that, and they stand up to him, the governor finds a way to make peace. You do that enough, you know, you start learning. Now, you can't do it all the time on little things or what have you, but they really do hold a significant key to ending this. The House Democrats also need to realize a little bit more that, you know, they're often content to just, you know, hang back and let the wizard do his wizardry. And, you know, we're way deep in a hole right now, and there needs to be more pressure there. I think there's some, but there needs to be more pressure there for the speaker to move. Brown would say there's no pressure. I would beg to differ slightly. Next question. Did I answer that?
Yeah.
Next question, sir.
Why does the governor not like the museum?
Man, I have no idea. I really don't. I gotta figure that's coming out of the budget office somewhere, somebody over there. I don't know. Why do you make your stand on a museum that's been around for how many? Yeah, right. I don't get that. You're going to make a big statement on a museum. It seems odd to me. But, maybe I'll ask him next time. That's a good question at a press conference. Why do you hate the museum, Governor? I don't think I'd phrase it quite that way. But, yeah. Why is there a bug up there? Never mind. Sam?
Rich, in light of this being a presidential year and that race usually having a big impact on down-the-ballot races, what effect do you think this whole crisis with the budget is on races for the General Assembly in November?
Well, it just depends on how weird the Republican nominee is. I mean, do we go into bizarro super weird with Trump, or just bizarro weird with Cruz, or, or do they just go out and pick somebody else and upset a whole bunch of rank and file Republican voters, right? There's going to be enormous headwinds. This is not a good time for the governor to be trying to take seats away from the Democrats. He will pick up, almost 100% sure, he'll pick up a seat in Quincy. John Sullivan, state senator. That district is a John Sullivan district or nothing, right, or Republican. And unless they haven't even found a candidate there yet, right? So I don't know, unless they can convince some guy named John Sullivan, because that John Sullivan is leaving. There's no doubt he's leaving. But they're going to have to. I mean, how hard could that be, though? There should be a lot of John Sullivans in that district. And just keep them quiet. So they'll get that. I think, some other districts are going to be in play, but some Republican districts will be in play, too. I think there's some strings that they can pull on the northwest side of Chicago. There's a Republican district up there that might be in play. They have a pretty decent candidate. Whether or not they back her, I don't know. We'll see. I think, on the other hand, as they constantly point out, the speaker has the lowest approval rating and the highest disapproval rating of any statewide figure in the country, including that dude from Alabama. Because it's Alabama. Fire Madigan 1.0 didn't work. Fire Madigan 2.0 didn't work. Brown texted me. They tried. They tried using Madigan against our state senator here. McCann, and it didn't work, right? If it doesn't work in a Republican primary, you got to wonder. But McCann, is a different sort of guy. Man he ran what turned out to be a pretty brilliant campaign. Plus, he just works all the time. He's everywhere. I'm kind of surprised he's not here. He may show up eventually. Maybe it's because he had to pay to get in. That was a joke about his finances. Is this being recorded? I guess I should have asked that earlier. But I think, I think this could be, people are not happy right now, man. I had a post on my blog the other day, I don't know, days all bleed together. Eric Zorn wrote a column saying that the governor was an epic failure. And some people on the blog, my blog, commented that the comments over in the Tribune were crazy nasty on Madigan. And against Zorn, I went over and looked, and there was like 250 comments, and most of them, almost all of them, were about Madigan and how Zorn was on Madigan's payroll or what have you, right? It's bizarre. So I posted a whole bunch of them, right? You can't base, it's not like a poll, right? But there is no doubt that the speaker's, the perception of the speaker out there is a lot more negative than it is of the governor. But the governor's falling. Maybe one day they'll be equals. Wouldn't that be fun? Great. A totally failed state again. So, I mean, this is going to be a heck of a race, and I think he's got all the money in the world, right? So he can make whatever he wants an issue and burn it in, and we'll see. The Democrats have the manpower in the precincts, but we'll see. Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Have
Right.
you learned anything about that meeting, and if they have another plan to meet again?
I don't know too much about it. Mapes, Tim Mapes, the Speaker's Chief of Staff, I asked him about it. He said, "Oh, it was a love fest." I'm kind of thinking that was snark, right? But I think there was some. I mean, there was they talked about having staff get together. That's a positive thing. They need to keep meeting though. This one meeting every 6 months stuff, or 5 months or whatever it is kind of ridiculous. And the last time they met was December, and the time before that was like, I remember like August, something. I have no idea. October? Oh yeah, that one. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that one. That was wonderful. They had the one where it was broadcast live. It's a positive that nobody talked to the press, right? And I wasn't there around, and so the reporters I think who were there were younger, and so in the past what we always did when we had these under Blagojevich, when we had a million leaders meetings that nothing ever came of, people would cover both exits because there's a side exit to get out of that office. Then you sneak onto the elevator and poof, you're gone, or the stairs if you want to be healthy. And nobody covered that side exit. I think one of the reporters said she was going back and forth. I'm like, you can't do that. You got to have somebody over there all the time. But it was good that they didn't talk, because often when they come out and talk, it's either it's bad news, right? The governor's insane or whatever. That was the last time before last governor, not this one. But so when they don't talk, it's often fairly decent news. And so take it for what that's worth. Yes, sir.
What's happening with Fairmac?
The people are trying to put it on the ballot. I don't think, the Speaker has not said anything kind about it other than it's a Republican plot. Yeah. He's called it a Republican campaign plot. There are a lot of Republicans that are trying to put that on the ballot. But he has a pretty good team of lawyers, so we'll see what their opposition is going to be. There will be. They will put that. They will try to put it on the ballot. They will get enough signatures, likely, and they changed some of the wording around from last time, which made it more likely to be constitutional. But Mike Casper is a darn good lawyer, so we'll just see. Frank.
With the Attorney General now having in place a ruling regarding the employment of all the state employees, if she goes forward and pursues this, and there's a possible shutdown, do you think this might expedite?
There's some ifs here. First, the Supreme Court has to certify the ruling, right? That takes time. Then there's other things that take time. There's things, it could be quite a while before she's able to go to court on anything. If you saw my blog yesterday, the Department of Revenue had sent out to its employees a notification saying, with a frequently asked question list, and one of them was, am I going to get paid if there's no, if the court rules, right? And they said, you will eventually get paid if you come to work as directed. So apparently the government wants workers to come to work without getting a paycheck. That'll be fun. Good Lord. Wait, there was somebody. Yes, ma'am.
How effective is a union protest or a citizen rally at the Capitol, say, you think within the next 3 or 4 months?
I mean, you'd have to see something like Wisconsin, right? And organized labor really has kind of shied away from doing that here. But I tell you, the one rally that got results was when AFSCME flooded the fairgrounds, the state fairgrounds, a few years ago. You know what the result they got? Bruce Rauner. So they were all out there screaming at Pat Quinn. Way to go, boys and girls. Yeah, I'm going to let my alderman ask a question. Let me ask you, though, when did you say my street's getting repaved? Probably.
Rich, obviously, there's a lot of egos involved in this thing, and there are...
Mine included.
There are issues there that could have some compromise. Why doesn't the governor take a couple victories and let's move on and fight another fight later?
Well, see, here's the problem has been, this is something I'm going to write soon, I think, because I've been talking to people about this idea that's brewing in my head. It's like, if you ever go out and buy something from a garage sale, right, or whatever, okay, or a house, or a car, or what have you, you have an idea in your head what price you're willing to pay for that, okay, say $100. I'm willing to pay $100 for that and not a dollar more. And the person who's selling that to you has generally an idea, even though it says $150, right, on the price tag, what that person would take, right? My bottom line's $110. I wouldn't take a dime below that. And then, poof, you get it at $105, split the difference, right? And you got a deal. This, though, situation has been over and over. I don't know exactly where it is today, but for months and months, I don't think that the governor really had it in his head what his bottom line was. What is the least he could accept? So it's really tough to negotiate. And on the other hand, I don't think that Madigan really had it in his mind yet, or maybe now he does, I don't know. But for months, I don't think he had it really in his mind. What is the most I'm willing to give? So if they don't even have those basic concepts down, negotiations are impossible. See what I'm saying? I forgot your question, but that was your answer. She had her hand up there, and then we'll come to you.
I'm just kind of looking at, you talked about the outcome of trying to minimize bureaucracy. And so I was wondering about the strategy of, as nonprofits and other organizations are having less and less money from the state, and then more people are stepping up to support that, whether there's a strategy to move everything to a public-private partnership in which there is more ways to run things like businesses.
Well, it's already that way. I mean, all of our social services are, state workers don't, except for like DCFS, okay, and Department of Corrections, they don't really deliver services, okay? We contract with these not-for-profits to deliver services. And that's really good because it saves us a lot of money. We don't have to pay them union wages, right? And the not-for-profits have to deal with that. And also because these not-for-profits, like Catholic Charities, Lutheran Social Services, whatever, there's a million of them, they also raise money from charitable contributions to help run these things, right? So it's a great deal for the state. So this is already happening. My concern, right, is after Lutheran Social Services laid off 40% of its employees, we started seeing like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 instances where for-profit companies came in and took over these services. Now, in the long term, I don't think it's going to be cheaper to go through for-profit companies because, I mean, one, they got to make a profit, okay? Whereas, you know, Catholic Charities doesn't have to make a profit. Two, they can't raise money through charitable contributions because they're a for-profit business. And three, how much lower can the pay go in these places, right? I mean, you have some of the kindest, warmest-hearted, hardest-working people in Illinois working at delivering these social services. And they work for peanuts. And so what are we going to do? We're going to hire people. Who's going to do it? It may end up costing us a lot more, but it puts money in people's pockets. That's what I'm really worried about, what could happen with this, that we drive these charitable groups out of business. And we have to turn to for-profits to pick up the slack, which will cost us, I believe, more in the long run. Can we do this and then, go ahead.
Rich, are there any serious discussions taking place on potentially moving the state to a 2-year budget cycle?
I think, you know, I keep hearing this more and more. People keep talking about this. Even one of the Republican leaders, no, I don't remember. Oh, I think it was Matt Murphy, I don't know, that talked about a 2-year process. Hearing it from both sides. I think it would be a good idea at least once, okay? This time, maybe even a 5-year budget, so we don't have to go through this crapola again. I don't think a 2-year budget is a bad idea, as long as you don't seal it shut, because things can change, right? I think it would give a lot more, you know, one of the problems they always have, school districts and these not-for-profits and everybody else, you know, construction companies and what have you, everybody who does business with the state, you know, every year is a struggle to figure out what the heck they're gonna get, right? So it would be nice, I mean, it would really be nice if we had even a 5-year budget, but we tweaked it every year, right? Or a 4-year budget or what have you. We just tweak it every year a little bit just to make sure more revenues come in, you move the money around, less revenues come in, you know, you make your cuts. I think it's a good idea as long as we don't go to every other year sessions, because that would hurt my business, and I don't want to like that. Tom?
And we certainly would not want to hurt your.
Heck no.
Have you explored, for those vendors who have provided services or supplies or whatever, betting that the state will have a budget? If there is not a budget for FY16, what do those vendors do?
I mean, a lot of them are going to go under, okay?
Many contracts say subject to appropriation.
Almost all of them. Not all, but almost all of them, especially in the social service world, right? So I think, you know, there's a lot of fear, for instance, that the governor's office is going to say, or the agencies are going to say, we need you to sign a new contract for next fiscal year. And people are going to say, what the heck? Check, right? I mean, I haven't been paid yet. But there's also a greater fear that what they're going to do is say, you're going to sign a contract for next fiscal year that included in that contract you agreed to accept X% less from the contract you signed last fiscal year. And if you don't, you ain't going to get a contract for next fiscal year, whether we have a budget or not, right?
Which then puts those folks,
In a world of hurt.
well, but it's automatically at the bottom of the list.
Mm-hmm.
If they stop supplying materials or services.
Right, and then they gotta wait until whenever the controller gets around to paying them, because they're no longer a contractor, and therefore their need is no longer any of our concern. Official. Oh yeah, this ain't gonna end for a long time. I mean, you think about what's happening here. not signing the budget that the admittedly unbalanced House Democratic, Senate Democratic budget has cost us more money as a state than signing that budget, even without the revenues. We are further behind because we're on autopilot, right? So the Democrats had cut some $400 million out of Medicaid spending, okay? But he vetoed that, so that $400 million is continuing to be spent. The federal consent decrees are requiring money being spent without an appropriation, so there's no control over it. He has said, the governor has said, and his budget director has said, that he couldn't line item or reduction item veto budgets because, you know, some of these things, they're in statute and they've got to spend the money. Okay, I get that. But he could have done it on some stuff, right? What we've got now, I checked today, and we're at $7.8 billion in overdue bills at the controller. But that doesn't include the social service money that hasn't been appropriated, the university money that hasn't been appropriated, and anything else that hasn't been appropriated, right? It's not included because it's not appropriated, so it's not in line, right? So there's a lot more out there above and beyond this. So then when and if we ever do get a budget and a revenue increase of some sort, they're not going to be able to pay that off. It's going to be like what happened the last time we had a tax increase in 2011, which is it took years. It was not until Quinn was almost out of office before that backlog got down to a rather fast payment period. It was pretty good, actually. And then poof, you know, it all disappeared again, just like that. I mean, we got everything together, right? And then the tax hike expired, and then there was no budget agreement. And I mean, we are in a deep hole that's going to take years to get out of. Years, unless we have a gigantic, huge tax increase. And I mean, if you think that happens, you are insane. Next question. Yes, ma'am.
Can you comment on the situation with AFSCME and how that's likely to all play out?
Well, that's the next bomb, right? I mean, they say that you know, the union says that the governor has maneuvered them into a position of, you know, blaming them for inaction when he's the one not moving. Does that sound familiar? He's really good at that. And he has declared impasse. Now, that has to be approved. And it has to be approved by a board that he appointed. Now, and there's a lot of debate, I think, within this administration. They're not the cowboys on everything that everybody seems to think on stuff. I mean, this is they go out on strike. How do you know, you can't bring the National Guard in to run DCFS. Oh, thank you. I hope this one has vodka in it. Nope, it doesn't. Right? So who knows? You know, there's a million things like that, right? And I don't know. But what he could do, he could have his board delay any sort of ruling, or even rule against him if he truly wanted to. I don't know. I mean, the fact that we haven't really heard anything out of what's going on, that might be good news. Or then again, they're not really talking, so that's no news is good news, I guess. But you know, how many more crises can we have at one time? And that will be a big one, a real big one. So I don't know. And if that does happen, then we are going to see Wisconsin down here. I won't be coming into the Capitol very often. Well, I do have a parking spot, though, so, yes.
Do you believe that the MAP grants and the higher ed budget will be approved before session ends or start the fall semester in September?
Well, one of the things that is, I think, and I didn't touch on it, is moving things along there, is the Senate President's threat not to send the governor the K-12 appropriate bill. Remember, that was the only appropriations bill he signed last year. And because he knew rookie governor, moms, kids ain't leaving their houses, right? There would be hell to pay, serious hell to pay. Cullerton has said, unless we get school funding reform, we ain't doing K-12. So, see you, pal. Don't want to be here. There's a school of thought, you get into Winnetka and you get things done, right? Which is, Winnetka is where he's from, so the autism cuts. Well, that had support from, every stratum of society, not the cuts, the program. And I'm sure you heard an earful there. There's also the child care cuts, right, which child care assistance program, his wife was very involved with that, so she lives in Winnetka too, so therefore Winnetka. The money for municipalities, right? So you cut money, you don't give any money to New Trier, and watch what happens. But it's not just New Trier, it's everybody, right? But the point is, it gets him where he lives. I think that's part of the thinking there, to try to move him off the dime. And I think that may be why we're seeing a little bit of movement here. One reason anyway, because they're deathly afraid. There are a lot of things that they care about that are shut down that they don't want to close. Who wants to see the University of Illinois, right, go under? But man, you close down the schools, AFSCME goes on strike, there won't be a room to stand within 5 miles of that building. You know what I'm saying? So I think that could really help move things along, even though it's playing his game, right? Which is not a really good game to be playing. It's, rape victims can't get a counselor because the counselor is out of business because she's not getting paid by the state so that we can get tort reform. It's not cool. It's not a cool game to be played. It's not a game for a lot of these programs. These social services, there's nobody else to go to. They're the most vulnerable people in the state, and we're peeing all over them, and it's just ridiculous.
Well, one more.
One more question, and then we can all drink. Or I will. Sam, you have one more?
Well, first of all, a comment, the labor board decisions, are subject to court review. The question is, do you see anything on the governor's turnaround agenda that Democrats could eventually agree to, or in some form or another, like maybe workers' comp reform, or I don't know, anything?
Look, they have to find he's not just gonna give up, okay? He's not. Even with the schools, he's gonna try to find a way around all this. He might go to the courts and try to get schools funded, right? Which would be a really weird precedent. But, what the heck, they're funding everything else. In any negotiation, right, you have to let the other side feel like they've won something. Madigan knows this because he's been in a million negotiations. And, you know, sometimes when he's been in these negotiations and when they're over there, I was like, what did Madigan actually come out of this with? It doesn't look like he won much. He got something. I just wasn't sure what it was all the time. Sometimes I was sure. But you got to give them a way out. And this is where Madigan has to accept some responsibility here. He, you know, is focused on things, and workers' comp, for instance. He's focused on the governor's proposal, which it's a non-starter with him. But there are other ideas out there. But he has until now, I don't know where his head's at right now, but he's refused to entertain those ideas, including one for me, right? That would save a bunch of money and really wouldn't hurt it that many people, even the trial lawyers, right? So I think there needs to be more of this, but I mean, he is where he is, and he's going to be facing tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars this fall, and he's going to need organized labor to do that. And so it's kind of ludicrous I mean, it's understandable why the governor wants some of these reforms, because lots of other states have them. And so I get that. But to say to Madigan, okay, upset your base, your financial base, right? And then I'll let you vote for a tax hike in a year where everybody's upset, right? Trump and Bernie and, you know. And by the way, I'm going to spend $40 million against your candidates after that's all over, right? Oh, yeah, great, wonderful. I'll agree to that deal today. It's ridiculous. So they have to find another way. And, I'm not the big brain, so I don't know. I don't know what that other way is. But they have to. We got to figure a way out of this stuff. Or because this is, you think it's bad now, give it another month, right? God, it's just getting worse by the day. So anyway, thank you again for inviting me. I'm sorry if I was depressing. What the hell, it's Illinois. I've been depressing for 10 years.
You're watching the Illinois Channel.